All right. Well, welcome everyone to the first virtual expert talk of 2025. Today's presenter is Jaclyn Parrish. She is the Director of Marketing at Southwestern Seminary with degrees from Dallas Baptist University and the B.H. Carroll Theological Institute. When she isn't working on her book on the Theology of Fun, she enjoys playing D&D with some of her closest friends. Thank you so much for coming, Jaclyn. I'm looking forward to hearing what you have for us today.
Thank you for having me. So today we're going to talk, the title of today's talk is The Job's a Game, How Game Design Builds Better Teams. And what I mean by that is that conceiving of your work as a game can improve both the quality of your work and the quality of your experience. You'll do better work and you'll enjoy your work more. This is true for leaders and the kind of work environments they create for others, but this is also true for workers, for team members, for everyone. If we think of our work in game design terms, it will make us have more fun and it will actually make us do better work. We're going to talk about that from the perspective of both leaders and followers, as it were. The first part we're going to talk about is how game design improves leadership. Now, here's the thing. Before we get into doing that, I want to take a minute to re-understand what I mean by leadership, because I don't want those of you who aren't currently bosses to tune out at this point in the conversation. So for those of us who don't wield a great deal of official power, don't tune out just yet. Let's re-understand what it means to act as a leader, because leadership comes in at least three flavors. It comes in the flavor of authority, which is the right to require others to carry out your will. Power, which is the capacity to compel others to carry out your will, and influence, which is the ability to convince others to carry out your will. Let me give you an analogy so I can help you understand what I mean by this. Let's say the King of England is walking down a dark alley at night by himself, and he happens upon a mugger. And the mugger pulls out a knife and says, "Oi, mate, give me all your cash." In that situation, the king has the authority. He's the king. This is one of his subjects. He has every right to require the mugger to put down the knife. However, the mugger is the one who has the power. He has the capacity to compel the king to turn over the cash because he's the one with the knife. However, if the mugger's grandmother were suddenly to dash out into the alleyway, take one look at her grandson and say, "Geoffrey, immediately put down that knife right this instant," she would be exercising what we would call influence, which is the ability to convince others to carry out your will. The king has authority, the mugger has power, the grandmother has influence. So if your decisions impact anyone else in your workplace, then you have at least one of these three, whether you're a manager, a boss, or an owner or not. The other reason not to tune out just now, even if you don't consider yourself a leader at this point, is that even if you're not currently in a position of leadership, the time to learn how to be a good leader is now. You can probably think of people, either in the news or in your life, who seems to have waited until the moment they were handed power to learn what to do with it. And so let's take a minute to think about what it means to be a good leader now, so that if and when we are ever granted greater power, authority, or influence, we'll know what to do with it. Now, the shape of this particular part of the talk is formed by the overlap of two books. One is called The Leadership Challenge by a couple of guys named Kouzes and Posner. And this book examines best leadership practices. These guys took several decades to canvass organizational leaders from around the world with one key question: what did you do when you were at your personal best as a leader? And from that research, they gleaned 5 quality principles of leadership. On the other hand, there's this book by a guy named Mihaly Csikszentmihalyi, which is called The Psychology of Optimal Experience. Csikszentmihalyi was also a researcher. He, however, did research on life's most enjoyable moments. He canvassed people from all walks of life, all cultures, all different socioeconomic brackets and generations, and determined certain commonalities across the world of those moments that people found the most enjoyable, the most rewarding, exciting, etc., the most fun, if you will. And from that research, he constructed something you've probably heard of, which is called flow theory. And flow theory holds that when we're in a state of flow, that particular mind state is incredibly pleasurable and enjoyable, and it becomes the standard by which we measure all our other experiences. Flow happens when a challenge meets, strains, but does not exceed our abilities. He describes it as the sweet spot between boredom and anxiety. If the challenge is too low, we're bored and we're not interested in what's happening. If the challenge is too high, we're anxious and afraid of failure and we don't enjoy ourselves. But when a challenge meets us where we are, pushes us for everything we've got, but still is within our ability to excel, we experience a highly enjoyable mind state called flow. And in his book, he outlines 8 elements of the flow state. Now, what I found when I was reading this book for class and this book for funsies is that they overlap. 3 of the 5 leadership principles from Kouzes and Posner line up to perfection with 4 of the 8 qualities of flow state from Mihaly Csikszentmihalyi. Sidebar. I am very confident I'm pronouncing Mihaly Csikszentmihalyi's name right. I have no idea if I'm pronouncing Kouzes and Posner's names right. If you think that I'm wrong, get in the comments, let me know. Bonus reading is this book called Reality is Broken by Jane McGonigal. This is another book that I draw from heavily from this talk, and it simply talks about how flow theory and game design influences all of our lives. It's a very good book. So, what I'd like to suggest today is that if you approach the puzzle of leadership as you would approach a game you're designing, it will make you a better leader and will build a better team. So think of it like this: your workers are your players, their work is the game. Make the game fun for them. I'm not saying to make your workplace fun by incorporating leisure elements into the workplace. Pizza parties, free ice cream, fun posters around the room, those may have their place. That's not what this talk is about. This is about structuring your team and their responsibilities in a way that their actual work optimizes for flow. This might seem counterintuitive, even to game designers, because obviously I want my people to get work done, not have fun. But consider how much more productive, creative, committed, excited, and energized would your team be if their jobs were enjoyable to do? So we're going to talk about 3 core ways you can gamify your leadership strategies due to the overlap between these 2 sets of researches. So, first of all, Kouzes and Posner suggests one of the ways to be a great leader is to inspire a shared vision, by which they simply mean make it clear what you're doing, how you're doing it, and why you're doing it. I'm going to give you another analogy because I like those. You walk up to a work site, construction workers all over the place. You walk up to one guy and you ask him, "What are you doing?" He says, "I'm stacking bricks." You walk up to a second guy, ask him, "What are you doing?" He says, "I'm building a wall." Then you ask the third guy, "What are you doing?" And he says, "I'm building a cathedral." Now, between these 3 guys, they've got a good grasp of what's going on at this work site. They have a good grasp of why they're doing what they're doing. They're building a cathedral. That's the grand vision, the thing that they're all moving towards. They understand what they're doing to get there. You build walls. They also understand how they're doing it. They have bricks that form walls that form a cathedral. They understand between the 3 of them both the big vision that they're trying to accomplish, what they're going to accomplish it with, and the particular resources they need to make it happen. That makes for good leadership. It also makes for good game design because Csikszentmihalyi tells us that 2 of the main elements of flow are a challenging activity that requires skills and clear goals. Games are satisfying because they focus our attention on specific activities we understand and know how to do. Success and failure are clear and they're measurable. Think about when you sit down to play Mario Kart. You know why you're doing it. You're doing it to win. You know how you can go about winning. You go fastest. You get across the finish line before everyone else. And you know what specific resources are available to you to accomplish that task. I know how to increase my speed. I know how to maneuver my vehicle. I know how to slow other people's down. That makes for good gameplay. The problem is that most real life work has goals that are boring or unclear. Far too many of us at our actual jobs and even occasionally in our side hustles show up to jobs where we push a bunch of buttons and do a bunch of things, but are very disconnected between the purpose of what we're supposed to be doing. Sometimes we don't have even a good idea of what resources are available to get the job done. So if you want to make work fun for your workers, for your team, then you need to clearly provide the what, the how, and the why of your vision together. Provide the why, the big picture, the ultimate goal, the thing you're trying to accomplish together. Provide the what, which is not just what individual workers are supposed to be doing, but how those individual workers connect with the big vision. You don't want someone saying every day, all I do is stack bricks. You want someone saying every day, I stack bricks in order to build cathedrals. Provide the what by helping people make the connection between how their daily grind moves the big vision forward. And also provide the how, which is make it clear what resources are available to get those jobs done. So the first thing you want to do is inspire a clear vision by clearly providing the what, the how, and the why. The same way you'd make win states easy and obvious to understand in a game. Second thing you want to do, according to Kouzes and Posner, possibly Kouzes and Posner, whichever, is encourage the heart, by which I mean recognize individual contributions and corporate successes. When people individually do well and are successful, recognize and celebrate that. When teams do well together, recognize and celebrate that as well. Of course, these guys say to do that for good leadership because Csikszentmihalyi tells us that feedback is essential for flow. Feedback is whenever you do something and you see as you're doing it that it's having an effect. And this is one of the things that makes games really satisfying because we like to see the health bar on that boss go down. We like to see our XP numbers go up. We like to see our levels go up and getting more stats, more magic items, more abilities. The problem is real life doesn't usually give us that in our work. Real life work doesn't often let us see measurable progressive success. This can be the case even if you're at a job where the vision has been clearly communicated. You still go to work each day, you push a bunch of buttons, you arrange a bunch of spreadsheets, and you get to the end of the day and you can't actually see how the things you did move the needle forward as it is. My dad experienced a lot of this when he was doing church planting, actually. Church planting is one of those kinds of really rewarding, important jobs that require you to do a whole lot of work for a long time and not see results. That's just how it is. So during that time, he became very fond of mowing the lawn because mowing the lawn provides instant feedback as you work. With every pass of the lawnmower, that grass gets shorter. With every clip of the hedge trimmers, the bushes look nicer. And after a couple of hours, he could step back, look at everything he'd done, and see feedback for what he had done. I did something, it had a result, I can see the results. That's what you want for your players, and that's what you want for your team members. So in order to do that, publicly and personally celebrate success. And you make that happen by collaboratively setting goals and marking progress toward them. Your individual team members need to be able to see throughout the day, okay, I did these things and it had this effect. As a team, you need to be able to see, we did this stuff, here's how it moved us forward together. Now, notice I did say collaboratively set goals. You've probably experienced in your career times where goals are set at this level of the hierarchical chain, but it's divorced from the reality of the people who are actually going to have to make that happen. So if you're setting goals for your team, set goals collaboratively to make sure that your 50,000-foot view of the goals and the purpose and the vision for the company are actually connected with what's happening on the ground in real life. So the second thing you need to do to gamify your leadership, encourage the heart, publicly and personally celebrate success, the same way you'd provide a health bar on a boss. Number 3, enable others to act, Kouzes and Posner say. And by enable others to act, these guys mean foster agency for individuals and trust amongst individuals. Your individual team members need to feel like they have agency in their jobs. They need to be able to take initiative, to solve problems, to move forward without being micromanaged or told what to do every step of the way. They need to be able to do that with the understanding that the other workers around them will respect their agency and will also wield their agency responsibly. And of course, Kouzes and Posner tell you to do this because Csikszentmihalyi tells us that a key part of what makes flow enjoyable is what he calls the paradox of control. One of the things that feels good about being in flow is that you feel in control. When you're doing something you're good at, when you're in the zone, as it were, you are very cognizant of, conscious of, and confident in your agency, and that feels very good. I experience a lot of flow when I run, for instance. I like the feeling of my body moving quickly and confidently down the street. I like the feeling of being in control of myself and my environment. Now notice, Csikszentmihalyi does say that it's the paradox of control, not the reality of control, because failure still remains a possibility. I can trip and fall while I run, and I have before. That remains the possibility. It's a paradox of control. No, you're not completely in control of your environment, but you're getting to experience a rare moment where you're very conscious of and confident in your agency. Games are satisfying because we feel like our actions determine the outcome. We have, for instance, when I sit down to play D&D every week, we have individual and shared agency at the D&D table. I may not be thrilled with the results of that particular session, but I can go into it knowing what happens at that table happens because of the choices we make. So even though failure remains possible, even though success may be incomplete, I can move forward confidently, knowing that the things I do determine the outcome. Problem is, real life work environments often strip workers of agency. We lack influence over decisions that affect us. Policies and procedures and processes are dictated from on high without reference to our perspective. And that makes for really unrewarding work. The same way it's really frustrating when the DM at a D&D table takes agency away from the players and tells them what their characters do. No one likes that. That's not fun. It's not good for flow and it's not good for leadership. So instead, cultivate agency and accountability through trust. Those are three very fancy words. Cultivate agency. Don't micromanage. Micromanaging is trying to play the game for your players. How fun would it not be to sit down and play your favorite video game with the creator standing right over your shoulder telling you how to do it the whole time? It doesn't even matter if they're right. You're there because you want to play and exercise your own agency. Having someone hovering the whole time telling you how to do it is not fun. It's not fun in a game. It's not fun in the workplace. Don't make your team agents of your will. Give them agency. Hand them problems, lay out resources, let them find solutions. Be open to them finding solutions that you didn't think of, and be open to them finding resources you didn't know about. Obviously, when they're struggling, be willing to offer additional training and coaching and guidance, the same way you'd let someone play the same level multiple times until they got it right. Cultivate agency. But also cultivate accountability. Your individual team members will not be able to enjoy their player agency if other team members are not wielding their agency responsibly. We know this in the game developing world because of the phenomenon known as griefing. There was a game several years ago that was a lot of fun to play and was very well designed called the Tomorrow Children. Great fun to play. You could sign on to a server with people around the world, mine resources in a really beautiful, compelling environment, and build things together. It was a lot of fun to play. It did struggle, however, because of human nature, because people would sign on just to mess with everyone else and tear down what everyone else was building. It's not fun to play the game when someone's griefing. Your team won't be able to enjoy or exercise their agency properly if others are not exercising their agency properly too. But again, that moment, just like when you fail a level, when you notice there is an accountability issue in your team, you have to make failure about learning what's really going on, not finding a scapegoat and punishing them. Learn to distinguish failure from actual malfeasance. Learn to distinguish our lack of resources from laziness. And so you're allowed to hold people accountable within the expectation that failure is not fatal. Failure is about learning. That's another thing that makes games enjoyable, is that failure isn't fatal. If you die in the boss fight, you take a deep breath, perhaps you say some choice words to the screen, and you restart the game and play again. Even in something as brutal as Dark Souls, you still have the option of starting the game again and trying again. In the same way, fostering accountability on your team has to be about learning from failure, not punishing failure. And last of all, trust. Cultivate agency and accountability through trust. Neither agency nor accountability are going to work together unless you built an environment of trust between yourself and your team members and between your team members themselves. The thing about trust is that leaders go first. If you're in a room full of people that need to trust each other and work together, and you're wondering whose job is it to take that first step of vulnerability, it's the leader's job. The person in power makes the first risk. And that's very scary, but that's the only way it's going to work. But again, even as you step out in trust, knowing that failure is possible, knowing that disappointment is possible, failure is about learning. It's not about punishing. If you lose a level in a game, the game doesn't kick you out and lock you out and never let you play again. You can still restart and try again. That's a great posture to have in the workplace as a leader. So the three ways I would suggest you can gamify your leadership are: inspire a shared vision, clearly providing the what, the how, and the why of what you're doing together. Encourage the heart by publicly and personally celebrating success, providing feedback like you would a health bar on a boss, and enable others to act by cultivating agency and accountability through trust. So that is the bulk of our talk today, which is about how game design can affect leadership. But game design can also improve work. We're going to finish up talking about that. This particular part of the talk is, I think, particularly important for people like us who are often caught between a side hustle we love and a day job we do because we need income. When that's the case, it can become difficult to relate to your day job work in a way that feels life-giving. I have found Romans 8:28 through 29 really helpful as I try to engage my work as if it were a game. Let me explain. Let's read Romans 8:28 through 29. And we know that for those who love God, all things work together for good, for those who are called according to his purpose. For those whom he foreknew, he also predestined to be conformed to the image of his Son, in order that he might be the firstborn among many brothers. According to this passage, your number one goal in the game of life is to look more like Christ. All things work together for good. What is the good God is working together for? To be conformed to the image of his Son. The way you win of sanctification is to look a little bit more like Jesus today than you did yesterday. I will admit, for a long time, that seemed like a rather boring goal. My thought was, what is the point of having all this Christ-like character if I'm not doing anything with that character to build his kingdom? There are myriad problems with that perspective, but we'll just talk about a couple. The first one is, how many Christians do you know, personally or from the news, that have shipwrecked their ministries entirely because they were more concerned with their kingdom resume than their conformity to Christ? You can get a lot of stuff done for the kingdom and never actually become like Christ, in which case it ends up shipwrecking all the hard work we do. We don't do the very first and most important thing, which is look a little more like Jesus today than you did yesterday. Another thing that really hit me recently is that at the end of the day, the world doesn't need more books. It doesn't need more games. It doesn't need more well thought out and exposited sermons. It doesn't need more large monetary donations. What it really needs is more people who exemplify the character of Jesus of Nazareth in everything they do, in how we work, and how we play, and how we buy and sell and vote and speak. The stuff we do is good. I write books. Y'all make games. We should both keep doing that because those are a part of building God's kingdom and making good things happen in the world. But those things that we do are only as good as the character we cultivate along the way. Your number one goal in the game of salvation is just to look more like Christ today than you did yesterday. And this is actually a very good goal for life. And we can see that due to Romans 8:38 through 39. For I am sure that neither death nor life, neither angels nor rulers, nor things present, nor things to come, nor powers, nor height, nor depth, nor anything else in all creation will be able to separate us from the love of God in Christ Jesus our Lord. Nothing else in creation will separate us from the love of God in Christ Jesus our Lord. What that means for us today is that nothing can stop you from looking more like Jesus. And the other good news is that you will never look 100% like Jesus. Here's why the second one is good news. As soon as you finish a game, you're really happy, you're very excited, and the very next thing you do is you find the next game. And so we need something as humans in life and in eternity that we can work towards forever, but never actually arrive. Because if we arrived, we would instantly be bored with no more challenges to take on. Where would be the flow in that? We need something that we can work toward for all eternity, not just in our earthly lives, but in the new heavens and the new earth. You will never 100% look like Jesus. He's finite, you're infinite, he's divine, you're human. You'll never fully arrive. And that's a good thing because that means you can always play this game. You can also always play this game because, again, nothing can stop you looking more like Jesus. There are a lot of things that can stop me publishing the books I want to publish as a writer. And there are a lot of things that can stop you making the games you want to make as a game developer. Nothing can stop you looking more like Jesus today than you did yesterday. Everything else in life is a mini game. It's the fishing mechanic in a Final Fantasy game. This is the real game. I'm only bothering with the other 80% of this talk because I believe that gamifying your leadership style is a way to conform your nature to Christ's and create an environment where others can do it the same. So approach your work like a gamer, constantly asking about the core win state. How do I engage this process, this person, this problem in a way that makes them and me look more like Jesus Christ? Kill.
Thank you very much, Jaclyn. That was very good. If anyone has any questions, now's the time to ask.
Very happy my voice didn't give out. I thought it was going to. It's been giving out all week every time I practice the talk, so I figured it would. I feel like there's a chat and I don't know where it went. There it is. I actually am curious with y'all, as game designers. I'm curious how this lands because I'm still workshopping a lot of these ideas. I'm curious how this lands with y'all in terms of thinking of leadership as a game or thinking of sanctification as a game. I found it very helpful in how I approach things, but I'm curious how y'all as actual game designers do. That's fine. Doesn't have to be well structured. This is only well structured because I worked on it for a month. No, way longer than a month. We don't talk about how long I worked on that. Mhm. Mhm. Sure. Oh, all of the above. Oh, okay, I'm setting aside my inner cynic. So there's a lot of research that gamification does work. There's a lot of research that says that it works. Jane McGonigal in her book talks about a game that she invented called Super Better that she gamified her approach to recovery from a traumatic brain injury. She developed a gaming structure to motivate her to do the specific things that she knew she needed to do to heal from a concussion, and it was very effective for her. And she's expanded that game, and lots of people have played Super Better, and it's helped them do the things they do. So on the one hand, I think it's a good thing that gamification is getting more press, as it were. At the same time, yeah, there are instances where it's not exactly working like it should. I mean, there's some pretty good research that a lot of times, like the Fitbits create more anxiety than anything else because they give you quantifiable numbers behind a feeling that start to measure the wrong thing. Because now you not only feel bad about walking, you feel bad about not hitting numerical goals. And so it can cut both ways, but overall, I would say, yeah, gamification is a very good and helpful way to learn and to motivate yourself. I think the way I'm trying to approach it is I want to not just gamify your tactics, but gamify your strategy. Um, and that's definitely my approach with thinking of sanctification as a game. Um, that was very helpful for me in using you if calling it gamifying your sanctification is probably a little bit dramatic, but at least using game mechanics talk to think about how you move through your spiritual life was helpful for me. And I do think that overall, like, gamifying your tactics can be helpful. Gamifying high level strategy can be even more helpful. There's also like uh he sent me high in his book. He says it much longer than I did, obviously, but he makes a point in his book that yes, if companies would optimize workflow for flow as opposed to productivity, that actually have more productive teams. But if it understandably feels risky and counterintuitive to companies that are focused on the bottom line. Is that helpful? A lot of words. Fair enough. Mhm. Mhm. Yeah. I think one of the ways in which Christians have a leg up is that and I'm leaning, I won't directly quote her because I can't remember the direct quotes, but I'm leaning heavily on Dorothy Sayers and what she has to say about the dignity of work. Um, Christianity and Christians are uniquely placed to be willing to prioritize the experience of the worker and not just the results of the work. I know definitely in Western cultures, we lean very heavily on the quality of work means only it's only to do with the product. We talk about, well, the quality of their work is really good. And what we mean is they make good stuff. As Christians, we have much more motivation to focus not just on the results that people get, but the process that gets along the way. I don't want a good product that has been made in a way that dehumanized the worker. And I'm sure there could be a Jewish or Muslim or Hindu or Sikh or even atheist person who may say the same thing, but at least with Christianity, we are in a place to say like, no, the dignity of the whole person has to include not just the results of their labor, but the experience of their work. Um, and being honestly willing to ask as a society, what's more important to you? Getting the results you want out of your workers, or your workers being able to live lives of dignity and enjoyment uh and worth. And that is one area in which I think being willing to simply ask the question of, is the process of this work not just making something good, but is the process itself worth living? Is actually one of the reasons why um for instance, in the world of gaming, you can in the world of gaming, for instance, uh oh, crikey, what's his name? He works at Riot Games. Oh, one of the lead designers at Riot Games is a believer, and something that he pointed out in a talk that I heard was that he knew people who have actual PTSD from making extremely violent video games. And I had been hearing my whole life, you shouldn't play violent video games because they're bad for you. The product is bad, was the argument I heard growing up. And I frankly didn't find that very convincing. This was the first time someone had pointed out someone might have gotten hurt to make that for you. And that was a completely different perspective for me. And I think it's a uniquely Christian perspective of I'm really sorry I can't play that because the person who made that, it broke them to make that for me. I can't do that. And that ability to focus on the quality of the worker's experience and not just the quality of the product they make. I think we have to be willing to prioritize that as Christians in whatever work you do, whether it's farming coffee or making games.
I had a question about balancing the agency and the accountability. Just
Mhm.
wondering, when you do see someone who's not being accountable, how do you like correct them without making them
Yeah.
feel like you're taking away their agency?
Yeah. Um, I think a key a key posture that I'm learning in therapy is one of curiosity. Uh, it's very easy for me, and I think for other people as well, to move through life with a posture of judgment and making assumptions. But approaching problems with curiosity gets you off in a much better direction. And so it's a matter of coming into that conversation going, Frank, Ted, Betty, whatever it is. I noticed that you took this action and it had this result. Talk me through why you took this action. Did you mean for this result to happen? And be willing to legitimately listen to, I want to be non-judgmentally curious about the choices you've made and be willing to have the conversation to try and understand, tell me why you're making these choices. Now sometimes in the midst of that conversation you will find, whether they admit it or not, you realize, oh, you were just being selfish or you were being irresponsible. Other times that gives you an opportunity to discover, oh, you didn't realize you weren't supposed to do that. You didn't realize when you said that it had this effect. And so approaching every one of those conversations with a posture of non-judgmental curiosity will get you off on a much better foot. Your Think of it like the curiosity of a child as opposed to the curiosity of a detective inspector. You're interested. I'm interested to see why you did that. Be open to the answer being that they meant to do it and it was the wrong thing to do and they made a wrong choice. But we also be open to hearing they didn't realize that was a bad choice to make, or that was not their intent, or any other number of things. Is that helpful? Yeah. Agency and accountability is really hard. Watching how the game The Tomorrow Children played out was instrumental and informative in that for me, because it's a very fun game if you can make all the griefers behave. And you have to, or no one else has any fun. It's not the only game with griefing problems, though, I'm sure. We've all had that person at the D&D table, I'm sure. We've been that person. Mhm.
Does anyone else have any questions?
Mhm. Yeah, yeah. Um, yes, that's a very good question. Um, I know that in a lot of the workplaces, okay, there are workplaces where you really are curing cancer. I've never worked in a workplace that had many legitimate emergencies, if that makes sense. In the sense that right now I work at a seminary. There are things that I need to do to get done from day to day that are urgent, that are important, that need to happen. Unless the building catches on fire, though, it's not life and death. And so I think actually you've stumbled, for one thing, on another area where we as Christians are uniquely positioned to have an attitude that failure isn't fatal. Um, because we know that ultimately our individual failures aren't fatal. Do I speak English? And so having that as your 50,000-foot view creates a lot of peace in the moment. Um, but also But spiritually, yes, approaching even the very serious, very real problems that you're encountering with a trust in God's sovereignty will put you in a much better posture to receive whatever happens, and will make sure that fear isn't driving the bus of your mind, as it were. Something else that's interesting, though, is that approaching your work like a game with the attitude that I have, on the one hand, failure isn't fatal, but also I have everything I need to succeed. You know, when you turn on a game, even if the game is really hard, you know that the game has given everything you need to succeed. Winning is possible, even in a really hard game. Something that Jane McGonigal talks about in her book is that, as she learned whenever she was trying to recover from a traumatic brain injury, she didn't actually know when she started playing super better, as it were. She didn't actually know if she had what it took to recover. Um, She'd had a really bad concussion, and it was leaving her with, insurmountable brain fog and constant pain, and she had no guarantee that she was going to successfully heal ever. But she chose to engage the healing process as if she did have what it took. She elected to make choices within the environment she was in, as if she had what she needed for success, and that completely changed her approach to the problem entirely, and is one of the things that made her recover more quickly, because she just chose to act like she had what she needed to succeed. And that's not delusion, that's measured confidence. How would I attack this problem if I knew I had what I needed to succeed? Um, Even if that means going and getting resources from outside the system. That help? You? It's always doing these talks is always challenging because I don't get any nonverbals. Except when you do talks for college kids, man. The Gen Z stare is real, y'all. They just look at you. It's terrifying. Yeah, the last talk I did for college students was absolutely terrifying the whole time. I thought they absolutely hated me, but then as soon as the Q&A